We are now on the third week of fourth quarter and I'm very excited for you. Just continue working hard and everything will pay off. Believe me. So, let's get started! Good day everyone, I am Teacher Aizie and I'm here to help you in this learning journey. Are you ready to learn? Before we start, make sure that you have your pen, paper, and self-learning module ready. At the end of our lesson, you were expected to give the importance of forming the expanded definition of words, determine the different techniques of expanded definition, and use variety of techniques in expanding definitions. In the previous lesson, you have learned about the difference between technical and operational definition. When we say technical definition, we mean describing technical terminology. On the other hand, operational definition is the detailed explanation of terms used during data collection. For example, the word student. If you check the dictionary, it means a person who goes to school. But in my research, I defined it as first-year college students of Wesleyan University, Philippines, school year 2012-2013, first semester. This time, we are going to talk about giving expanded definition of words.
An expanded definition defines and explains a single term, concept, or object, pins down the meaning of a specific word, or defines an abstract concept, and goes deeper than a simple dictionary definition. An expanded definition is an important writing tool that you will need if you are writing for a person who is not an expert or specialist in a particular subject. An expanded definition explains a complex or unfamiliar term to make it easier to understand, which is important to effective communication. These are the techniques in expanding definition. 1. Etymology explains the origin of the word itself. For example, arbitration. Arbitration comes from the Latin word judicium, which means judgment. 2. History discusses the history of the term, its use, and controversies associated with it. For example, the use of arbitration as third-party mediation dates from 1630s. 3. Cause and effect discusses how the situation came about and what effects it may have. For example, an arbitration clause is considered to be ambiguous when the parties do not express clearly that in case of conflict, the method to use to settle the disagreements will be arbitration. Hence, parties are compelled to refrain from signing confusing agreements to arbitrate because the general rule is that arbitration is prompted out of the contract, and if there is not an explicit arbitration clause within the contract, it would not be an agreement to arbitrate. 4. Description lists and defines the term. For example, arbitration is the process of solving an argument between people by helping them to agree to an acceptable solution. It is the formal process of having an outside person chosen by both sides to a disagreement to end the disagreement. 5. Principles of operation discusses how something functions, including any special materials or conditions required. For example, arbitration is conducted by a trained arbiter who sets down the rules that the parties must abide by. The object of arbitration is to obtain a fair resolution of disputes by an impartial third party without unnecessary expense or delay. Parties should be free to agree on how their disputes are resolved, subject only to such safeguards are necessary for the public interest. Courts should not interfere. 6. Classification shows how the topic fits into a larger category. For example, arbitration is one of the alternatives to going into a formal court to settle disputes. 7. Contrast shows how the topic differs from other in the same class. For example, in an arbitration proceeding, no lawyers are present. The main difference between arbitration and litigation law is that the court is involved in the case of litigation as it is a lawsuit, whereas in arbitration, a settlement between the parties is done outside of court. 8. Comparison shows how the topic is similar to others in the class. For example, as with lawsuits or other court proceedings, the decision in an arbitration proceeding is legally binding on the parties. 9. Analogy explains and compares two dissimilar topics where the second is familiar to the audience. For example, an arbiter is like a referee. He or she listens to both sides and decides as to who is at fault without intervention of outside parties. 10. Examples represent other things because they have all the main qualities or characteristics that the thing they represent also have. For example, arbitration was used to settle the dispute between the labor and union management. Two people who are divorcing cannot agree on terms and allow a third party to come in to help them negotiate. 11. Illustrations are pictures in a book, magazine, etc., or the process of illustrating something. For example,
There you have it, the expanded definition of words. Did you understand the lesson? Now let's have a short exercise. Please get a pen and paper and answer the following questions.
identify the terminology that is being described in each number. Write your answer on a separate sheet of paper. 1. What technique in expanding definitions show how the topic fits into a larger category? A. Analogy. B. Classification. C. Comparison. D. Examples. Two. What technique in expanding definitions is the process of listing and defining the parts? A. Cause and effect. B. Classification. C. Comparison. D. Description. Three. What technique in expanding definitions explains the origin of the word itself? A. Analogy. B. Comparison. C. Etymology. D. History. Four. What technique in expanding definitions explains by comparing two dissimilar topics where the second is familiar to the audience? A. Analogy. B. Conclusion. C. Example. D. Illustration. Five. What technique in expanding definition shows the topic differs from the others in the same class? A. Analogy. B. Classification. C. Comparison. D. Contrast.
How did you fare in your exercise? Your learning activity sheet will be uploaded in our Google Classroom. So, I hope you learned something from our discussion today. I hope to see you again in our next video lesson. To get notified of the new video lessons, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and tap the notification bell. Bye everyone! Thanks for watching!